thank you for having me here. So yes, my name is. Let's get that. My name is Dr. Morgane Merien. The weird name and the weird accent is because I came to New Zealand when I was 11 years old. I'm French originally, and my accent has just now been meshed with other people's accents. So sorry about that. As Nicole said, I did spend the last 8 years of my life looking for sentient twigs, pretty much, in the New Zealand bush. I have a PhD in that. My doctorate was focusing on whether they actually look like sticks. They do, kind of. So I'm now an expert in that. Woohoo! That is me. So I love stick insects. I absolutely fell in love with them. Stick insects are an insect. They belong to the order Phasmatodea. There's about 3,000 species around the world, and we're very lucky to have about 23 of those in New Zealand. I say about because there's a lot of work that needs to be done with the describing. Some of them need to be meshed together, and there's a few undescribed species as well. My love for them means that I think that they're the perfect insect to introduce to people that are scared of insects and other critters. Because, especially in New Zealand, as we will see, they are completely inoffensive. They are super chill. You can see them on the table right here. They've been here all evening for the past half an hour. They're still here, all three of them. 1, 2, 3, yes. They've not, even though I kept an eye on them. And they're really good with children because they're quite big. And they're still very alien-like, but they don't bite, these ones don't have wings, so they don't really run away, and they just move quite slowly compared to other critters, which is usually the main comment that I get as to why people are scared of them. So I'm here tonight to convince you that these guys and gals are now your favorite insects, and they're the best. And to do that, I'm going to pull some life lessons that I've learned from them over the years. These are mostly referring to the way that they deal with predators, either by hiding from them or trying to make them go away, as our sticky is doing here. If one of them starts to walk off, please do let me know. I do need them back. They're my babies. Yes, so let's get on with the show. So first one, lesson 1, fake it till you make it. And that has to do with their camouflage. So stick insects, Phasmatodea, that comes from the Greek phasma, which means ghost-like, and that refers obviously to their appearance. Yeah, a stick insect, an insect that looks like a stick. Duh, well done, human. And obviously they do. They actually do resemble sticks, and they've got multiple camouflage techniques to be able to hide from predators. You get background matching, which is usually where the coloration of the body matches the background, and so that you blend in completely, and your predator just does not even register that you're there at all. The other one is masquerade, and it is camouflage, but it's slightly different in that in that one, you're actually trying to mimic something that's already in the environment, like a stone or a stick or a bird poo. And so the predator does see you, but they just think that you're something else, and so they miscategorize you as an innocuous item that doesn't need to be eaten. So those are their main camouflage techniques. And stick insects have really taken that to the extreme. They look absolutely incredible. So this is a moss mimic stick insect from Ecuador, and it's just a master of camouflage. They are completely incredible. You would never be able to see that in the wild. I promise you, you will walk past it and just not see it at all. I hope you can see it in the video. Lesson 2. If you can't hide from them, and they are going to come for you, well, you should be a thorn in somebody's side. It's never a bad idea. And stick insects, they do that. You will find some with spines on their bodies, and some of it is camouflage. They're trying to mimic some of their plant host, as best as they can, but some of it is actual spines to make sure that if somebody tries to take a bite at them, it will hurt and it will not be worth their time. The stick insect on the right is called a touch me not stick insect. For very good reason. You do not want to get a handful of those. It will hurt. The one on the, on the left, that is a stick insect here in New Zealand. You might have seen it before. It's called, because humans are really good at names, the spiny stick insect. And it is very common all over New Zealand, found right from the top of the North Island all the way down into Rakiora, Stewart Island. Another lesson, spray and walk away. What do you think that refers to? Get your mind out of the gutter, not that one. No, this one is about chemical secretions, which is if something tries to get at you, you're going to spray a noxious chemical in their face to tell them to bugger off. And usually it really does hurt. You do not want to get it in your eyes and other places like that. The southern striped walking stick on the right is from North America, and they're quite known for being quite, the chemical is quite bad. The one on this side is a peppermint stick insect from Australia. Peppermint because its chemical smells like peppermint, funny enough. And you're going to see it in action. So lucky for us, none of our stick insects in New Zealand do that. The most that they will sometimes do if you grab them is kind of throw up in their mouth. If that tells you, when you learn about New Zealand fauna versus the rest of the world, you kind of get to realize that New Zealand is on a different step, a low step. In that, and it's a reflection of the type of predators that they kind of evolved with, obviously. In Australia, they evolved with quite predators like mammals that would hunt them by scent and movement, and so they had to evolve other things other than hiding away. In New Zealand, the main predators were birds. So if you could avoid being seen by them, you were a survivor and you would win. But so it does mean that in Australia, their fauna is quite a lot more punchy, I would say. New Zealand's a lot more meeker, which is fine. It is, it's our lot. So, on to the next lesson. If you can't get away, but you're trying to, then just let it go. Let it go. Just like Elsa says, just let it go. And when I say let it go, not ice, but actually let go of a limb. And that is called autotomy. So you might know of lizards that do this with their tails. Well, stick insects do also do this with their limbs. Obviously, insects have 6 legs, all in total, so they can, stand to lose a couple. Usually more than half, and you're in trouble. In this one, this is a nymph, so a baby stick insect from New Zealand, and I don't know if you can tell at the top, but it's missing 2 legs. Those little curly bit, those are the legs growing back after they've been lost. How can this happen? How do they lose their legs? Usually it's if a predator like a bird were to grab them, they might grab leg. And so the stick insect might start to get carried away by its legs, and they'll just let go of the leg and fall back down into the bush and just won't be seen at all again. Another way that they can lose their legs is just when they molt. So molting is when you shed your skin. So this is the way that invertebrates grow. Unlike us, they've got an external skeleton. And so in order to get bigger, they need to remove their skin, kind of like a suit, and kind of expand and then harden again. So stick insects go through 6 or 7 of those stages to grow. And sometimes when they're removing their skin, they get stuck. So instead of just perishing altogether and just, letting it go altogether, they'll just let go of one or two legs. And then if there's still a nymph and they just have not reached adulthood yet, they'll be able to grow them back, surely but slowly. So sometimes you'll see an adult stick insect with a leg that's slightly stumpier than the rest, and that's what will have happened. They will have lost that leg at some point in their youth, and then have just slowly grown it back. So they're quite amazing. Bet you didn't know all of that. Next lesson, lesson 5, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. So stick insects, as I mentioned, are really quite well known for their camouflage and hiding away, but there's always a couple that have to go against the tide, isn't there? And we call that, and they just want to be really, really colourful. That's called aposematism, or warning coloration. So in the insect world, one way to kind of tell predators to bugger off is to just be really brightly coloured. Usually you'll see that with like the monarch butterflies, which are black and orange. That's warning coloration. The wasps, which are yellow and striped black, that's warning coloration. That's just to make sure that the predator remembers to associate those bright colours with that did not end well last time, I will not go there again. So some insects have figured that out and have, they thought, well, I'm going to tap into this system, even though I'm not actually a threat. If they were to grab me, I would be done for. But they've managed to kind of hijack the system and to put on those colors to kind of make it work for them, and it does. So in the one on this side, that's a stick insect from Madagascar. It's actually a big female, which is the big brown one, and then the little one hanging on underneath it is the male. So the male and the female have adapted two very, very different techniques. So the female's gone, I'm gonna hide away and be camouflaged. She's gone with that brown, drab color, looking like a stick or branch, really. And the male, which he's very, very skinny and a lot smaller, which is also another thing that's quite usual for insects. The females tend to be bigger. The male is really, really brightly colored. He's that kind of bright blue, electric blue with yellow and red, and they're quite incredible to see. On the right, left, Jesus Christ, left is the stick insect from, it is, on the right is a stick insect from New Caledonia, which has not been described yet. I was able to see it on iNaturalist, shout out to iNaturalist, and it looks like a striped zebra. It's quite insane, and it's beautiful. And again, it's just so that their predators remember that color combination, no good, will not go there again. Now, if warning coloration is not enough, here's another lesson. Let your freak flag fly. Try saying that 3 times, that's very hard. Which just means, just be the weirdo that you know you truly are inside. Let it all out, and maybe that will work at repelling the other weirdos away. And that's called startle displays. So that is a combination of having brightly colored ornaments on your body, sometimes wings, as well as hissing. And usually you're flashing your wings. So for example, the black beauty stick insect on your left is from Peru. They're endangered, those ladies. They're quite beautiful. They were only discovered quite recently. And they've got, the females have tiny little red wings on the back. Those are wings. They can't use them to fly. They're vestigial. But what they will do is that they will flash them at their predators. So normally they're lying flat on their back and they're hidden away. And suddenly if they feel threatened, they're gonna go and hiss. And that is what the other stick insect is also doing from Madagascar. So again, normally the wings are hidden away, and if they feel threatened, they'll go full and start hissing. It's a bit hard to imagine, but when it actually happens, it's a bit like, whoa, okay. So here's a video. So that usually is enough if you were a predator and you were not expecting it, and you were to grab the stick insect. That's usually enough for the predator to go, whoa, okay, did not expect that. What is happening? Something's wrong with it. And to let go. And usually with stick insects, if you let them go and they fall into the leaf litter or the underbrush, and they'll just stay still, completely still. And that is enough for them to make it out, to survive. Next lesson, fake your death. That is a very good way of getting away from predators. Pretend that you're dead. Quite a few animals in New Zealand do this. It's called thanatosis. So those stick insects, all of those are from New Zealand. That's my hand. There's a baby, the little tiny one on my thumb is a baby stick insect, so that one will have hatched about a few weeks beforehand. So that behavior, they're exhibiting it even straight from the beginning. And so what they do is that if they feel threatened or something coming towards them, they'll let go completely of a branch and just play dead. They'll just go catatonic. And they'll do that in your hand. And it works really well because in the field, here's a tip, if you're trying to catch stick insects, you may want to go like this, but actually what you should do is like this. So always have your hand underneath, because usually they will let go and then they'll fall straight into your hand. It's quite nice. It's like, oh, thank you. I've been looking for you for 3 bloody hours. I'm not bitter at all. It's fine. Yes. And if they so happen, if you were not prepared and they happen to fall into long grass, for example, yeah, that's it. Good luck. You might as well just sit down and just stare at the long grass, because you will not be finding them again. How am I doing for time? I feel like I'm going quite quickly. This is the last lesson, which is fight the patriarchy and forsake men. Yes, so it's not exactly to do with physical defenses, but actually for the females it's really good, because sex is costly for females in the animal world, maybe even in the human world. But and so how have stick insects gotten around that? Well, what they do is that they've got asexual reproduction. So that is called parthenogenesis. So you've got normal sexual reproduction, and then you've got asexual reproduction, which is where a female lays eggs that are clones of the mothers. And there's a few different subsystems in parthenogenesis. With some, the genetic material gets remixed every time, but it's the same material, so it's a bit complicated. But yeah, parthenogenesis, asexual reproduction, can be obligate, which means it's the only way of reproduction in that species, or it can be facultative. And facultative means that the female is able to go back and forth or choose between the two. And so that's quite advantageous if she just does not want to mate with the male. She just decides he's not good enough for her. He maybe just does not have the characteristics that she's looking for. So females can be choosy in that instance, which is quite nice. Or if they happen to be in an environment that is lacking in males, they'll still be able to continue their line and so survive and so on. So they'll be able to choose. In some species, as I mentioned, it's completely obligate, and so there's no males at all, including these girls. So the 3 stick insects on there, they're all females. These gals do not have males to have to contend with. They're completely chill. And they're loving life, I promise you. And I know that because for my honours project, I thought that, this facultativeness of being able to choose and not choose and go between the two is perfect to be able to look at the cost of sex. And so what I did was, for a year, I did mating trials. So I had females either completely alone, chill in their own little apartment, yay big, or I had females mate with one male, and that was it. And then I had females mate with 3 males. And then I measured their survival, I measured their weight, I measured the number of eggs that they laid, the weight of those eggs, the size of those eggs, and lastly, how well those eggs hatched. And what I found was really interesting, because the females that did not have sex at all lived the longest. However, the females that mated the most had the highest level of eggs hatching. So you kind of have to choose as a female. You get to a point where, do you try and just not mate with any males and live longer, and maybe at that point you probably are laying way more eggs, or do you shorten your lifespan but then have a higher viability in your eggs? So that was really, really interesting. But usually it's quite good for the females when there's no males. They do quite well. And that's about it from me. I hope that you've now learned a little bit more about stick insects, and that they're now your favorite insects. This is very much, there's a lot of lessons still out there about stick insects. I could go on about them for hours, but I will leave you with this. They're now your favorite insects, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any questions?
Hello. Just wondering, given some of the physiological similarities in terms of coloration, body layout, and things, are stick insects really closely related to mantises, and do some of these lessons translate from one to the other?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, historically, back in the old days, Victorian scientists, naturalists, thought that stick insects and praying mantids were part of the same group, the same order. So that's how we group insects. But we now know that they're most closely related to crickets and other things like that. And that's one of the main differences between praying mantids and stick insects, is that praying mantids are carnivorous. They eat other animals. Stick insects are completely herbivorous. All they want to do is just find a nice tree to munch on and spend their lifetime on there. And just, that's all they do. They're not going anywhere. Yeah, so yes, back in the day, not anymore. Any other questions?
What's the easiest way to find what?
What is patience? Patience, and it's funny because my first time going out to look for them fully with my supervisor a while ago, he was finding them everywhere, and I was like, what the hell are you doing? How are you doing this? And actually, it's just kind of getting your eye in. Over time, your mind forms what we call a search image. And search image is how we use characteristics to quickly categorize whatever we see into certain groups. And so with stick insects, it's, you know, the length, the way, the length of the body, the thickness of it, kind of the legs maybe sticking out and things like that. But that's really interesting because there's a whole host of, for example, species that are different colors. They're all the same species. That's an adaptation that we think has evolved to defeat search image. Because it's easier to look for an object that you know is all blue, but suddenly if one starts to diverge and is pink, you're kind of making it, just adding a couple of seconds onto you searching for it, for the predator, and it's not worth their time. But yeah, just patience and knowing which plants that they like. In New Zealand, all our stick insects are native, so only found here. There's a caveat because there's 3 that have made it to the UK. But they really like native plants. So, you know, this is totara, rata, rimu, things like that, pahutukawa. And there's a couple of species that are a lot more generalist in what they eat, and they'll be found on even roses and blackberry and other kind of not native stuff. But then there's some that are pretty much just in the bush. and that's where they'll be, just on the trees, going out at when the sun sets. So during the day, the main thing to do is just hang on and stay still and remain hidden. And then at night, that's when they'll kind of start going walkabout, looking for their mates, looking for food, starting to mate. That's that. Yeah, so go out in your garden with a torch when it starts to get dark and look on native plants, and yeah, you might get lucky. These girls are from a friend's garden in Linwood. So, yeah, they are there. I promise you they're there. And yeah.
Hi, thank you. Stick insects are my favourite insect now. 2 questions. How long do they live for, and do they live on the same tree their entire life?
Good question. So our ones in New Zealand live for about a year or so, depending on conditions. Sometimes they can go a bit further if the female is quite fat. Do they live on the same tree forever? Well, our ones in New Zealand are not very good at dispersing. Like, they just, usually with a field site, I will go back to the same trees over and over again, and very seldom would I have seen them spread elsewhere, because our ones don't have wings, and they're not kind of going really that much walkabout. However, there are dispersal ways. So, like, for example, there's been studies that have shown that if stick insects get eaten, stick insect eggs get eaten by a bird and they get pooped out, they are still viable. So they could still be spread that way. With us humans, obviously, if we're moving plants around and the eggs are in the soil, that's kind of will be dispersing them. So, yeah, usually they will stick to where they were born, around that area.
Thank you so much, Dr. Morgane. I think that's all the question time we have, but definitely come check out the stick insects. We have a 10-minute break, so check those out, speak to our speaker, and we'll come back in 10 minutes.